අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
First at 9, this Wednesday, the 24th of May 2023. Legislative removal. Parliament passes resolution to remove PUCSL Chairman Janaka Ratnayaka with a majority of 46 votes. Concerning delays in laws can affect the investment climate of the country, says legal experts, highlights necessity for changes in the legal system. Baseless. The Indian High Commission refutes media reports claiming India sought compensation to assist Sri Lanka during Express Pearl and New Diamond disasters. Declining. Sri Lanka food inflation in April eased by 12% to 30%, says World Bank report.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Indivari Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us tonight live on AdaDerana 24 on your English news service. We take you to your top stories making news tonight. A motion seeking the removal of Janaka Ratnayaka from the position as chairman of Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka was passed in Parliament today. The proposal to remove Ratnayaka was passed with a majority of 43 votes, with 123 MPs voting in favour, while 77 others voted against. Ruling party members as well as several opposition members supported the motion, while opposition parties, including the Samagi Jana Balavegya and the National People's Power, voted against the resolution. The proposal was presented by Leader of the House, Minister Susil Premajayantha, pursuant to Section 7 of the PUCSL Act. Here's a look at how some views were expressed by parliamentarians during the debate today.
2002 අංක 35 දරන ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහජන උපයෝගිතා කොමිෂන් සභාව පනතේ 7 වන වගන්තිය ප්‍රකාරව එහි තත්කාලීන සභාපතිවරයා සහ සමාජිකයෙකු වන JWMJPK රත්නායක මහතා එහි සමාජිකත්වයෙන් ඉවත් කිරීමට මෙම පාර්ලිමේන්තුව යෝජනා සම්මත කර සිටියනුයි මම යෝජනා කරනු ලබනවා.
මෙම යෝජනාවට අදාළ තැනැත්තා ඉල්ලීමක් කරලා තිබුණා මේ විවාදය දැක බැලීම සඳහා එතුමන්ට අවසරයක් දෙන්නයි කියලා. කතානායකතුමා නිවේදනය කරලා තිබුණා මේ ගැලරිය වහලා තියෙනවා කියලා අද. නමුත් අපි දැක්කා ඉස්කෝල ළමයි අද ගැලරිය ආවා. තාමත් ඉන්නවා. ඉච්චර බය වෙන්න අවශ්‍යද?
තාම අපේ ගැලරිය පාසල් දරුවන්ටයි මහජන නියෝජිතව යෝජනා කරන ඒ අයටයි තමයි අවස්ථාව දීලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක තමයි.
විශේෂම කරු නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායකතුමනි පළවෙනි චෝදනා දෙකම මේ රටේ අභියාචනාධිකරණයේ විසින් ඔහුට විරුද්ධව ලබා දීපු නඩු තීන්දුවක් පදනම් කරගෙන එල්ල කරපු චෝදනා දෙකක්. ලබා දෙන තීන්දුව තමයි ජනක රත්නායක කියන පුද්ගලයා තමන්ගේ තනි මතයට කමිෂන් සභාවේ ස්වාධීනත්වයට එරෙහිව වැඩ කටයුතු කරලා තියෙනවා කියන මේ සමාජිකයා. මෙතුමාට ඉදිරිපත් කළ තියෙන තුන්වෙනි චෝදනාව මොකක්ද? මොහු වසන් කරලා තියෙනවා මොහුට විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයත් සමග තියෙන ගනුදෙනුව මොකක්ද කියන එක. හතරවෙනි චෝදනාව කිසිම අධ්‍යයනයකින් තොරව ඔහු කියනවා මෙන්න මෙහෙම තීන්දුවක් ගන්න හදනවා කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයෙන්. එහෙම තීන්දුවක් ආවොත් එහෙම අපි 100%කින්වත් විදුලි ගිල ගාස්තු වැඩි කරන්න ඉඩ තියන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. ඒ වගේම කරු නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායකතුමනි පෙබරවාරි මාසයේ සංශෝධනයෙන් පස්සේ අපි මැයි 15 දුන්නා යෝජනාවලියක්. මැයි 15 වෙනිදා දීපු යෝජනාවලිය පිළිබඳව මහජන උපයෝගිතා කොමිසමේ සභාපතිවරයා මැයි 16 වෙනිදා ප්‍රකාශයක් කරනවා. මැයි 16 ප්‍රකාශයක් කළා කියනවා විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයෙන් ලබා දීලා තියෙන සංශෝධනය එකඟ වෙන්න බෑ 125කින්වත් මේ මුදල අඩු කරන්න ඕන කියලා. එතන අධ්‍යයනයක් කරලාද මේක කිව්වේ ප්‍රකාශයක් කරේ. කොමිෂන් සභාවේ සමාජිකයන් තිදෙනාම ලිඛිතව දැනුවත් කරලා තියෙනවා මේ සභාපතිවරයාගේ අත්නෝමතික ක්‍රියාකලාපය. තර්ජනය කිරීම ඔහුට අවශ්‍ය විදියට තනි මතයට කටයුතු කිරීම නිසා ඔහුගේ යටතේ තවදුරටත් කටයුතු කරන්න සූදානම් නැහැ කියලා.
දැන් මේ සභාවේ මේ විවාදයට ජනක රත්නායකට සහ ඒ පවුලේ සමාජිකින්ට එන්න තහනම්. ගැලරිය වහලලු. හැබැයි ඊයේ දිනේ අනීතික ලෙස රටට රත්තරන් සහ අනෙකුත් බහන්න ගෙනාපු මහජන මන්ත්‍රීවරයෙකුට දඩයක් ගෙවලා මේක ඇතුළට ඇවිල්ලා ඡන්දෙ දෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. මේකද සිස්ටම් චේන්ජ් එක.
එතුමා ඊයේ ප්‍රවෘත්ති සාකච්ඡාත් තියලා මොනවද කියන්නේ? මහා ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී සිටින අය අද පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේදී එතුමා වෙනුවෙන් හිට ගන්න ඕල්ලු. අපි මහා ජනතාව පෙනී සිටින ඉඳ තමා එතුමා එලවන්නේ. ඒ විදුලි නිෂ්පාදනය කඩා වට්ටන්න දෙන්න බෑ.
ඒක එතුමා කෙලින්ම කිව්වා ඊයේ මම පාරේ බැහැලා යනකොට මිනිස්සු මට කියනවා කියලා ජනාධිපති මැතිවරණයට එන්න කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ එතුමා සැරසෙන්නේ මේ හැම දෙයකින්ම අන්තිමට ඉහළ පුටුවට යන්න.
දැන් මේ ජනක රත්නායකව තමන්ට එපා වුණේයි. හරි පැහැදිලි. ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය ආරමුදු විදුලි මිල වැඩි කරන්න කිව්වා. කොමිසම ඒකට එකඟුන්නේ නැහැ. මේ කොමිසම ඒකට විරුද්ධ වුණාම අල්ලගත්තේ කොමිසමේ සභාපති. විදුලි මිල වැඩි කරන්න විරුද්ධ වෙච්ච ඒ කොමිසමේ සභාපතිවරයා ආණ්ඩුවේ දේශපාලන උවමනා විශ්ත කරගන්න නැති වුණාම ඔහුව ඉවත් කරන්න දරන උත්සාහයක් ඒ ක්‍රියාවලියට අපි කිසිසේත් එකඟතාවයක් නැහැ.
And the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Vijayasekara, today presented to Parliament the proposed tariff structure for the upcoming electricity tariff revision in July. Accordingly, the tariff for electricity consumption up to the first 30 units in the domestic category will be reduced by 5 rupees to 25 rupees per unit. Meanwhile, the fixed charge for the first 30 units consumed will be reduced to 250 rupees from 400 at present. It is also proposed to provide relief between 29% and 40% for consumers in the hotel and tourism industry.
සහන ලබා දීලා තියෙන්නේ අපි ගණනය කරලා තියෙන්නේ සත්‍ය තොරතුරු සහ ඉදිරි මාස කීපය සඳහා ජනන සැලසුම අනුව. ඒ සංශෝධනය අනුව ඒකක බිඳුවේ ඉඳලා 30 දක්වා කාණ්ඩය වෙනුවෙන් දැනට තියෙන රුපියල් 30ක ඒකකයක මිල රුපියල් 25 දක්වා අඩු කරන්න අපි යෝජනා කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ස්ථාවර ගාස්තුව රුපියල් 400ක ඉඳලා රුපියල් 250ක් දක්වා අඩු කරන්න යෝජනා කරලා තියෙනවා. මුළු ප්‍රමාණය කීයද? අවමයේ 23කින් අඩු වෙනවා. උපරිමයේ 29ක් දක්වා ඒක අඩු වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ඒකක 31 ඉඳලා 60 දක්වා 9%කින් අඩු වෙනවා. ඒ අනුව ආගමික සිද්ධාස්ථානවලත් 0.30 අතර තියෙන පාවිච්චි කරන ආගමික සිද්ධාස්ථාන තියෙනවා 15646ක්. ඒ සියලු දෙනාගේ විදුලි බිල ජුලි මාසේ සංශෝධනයේදී 23කින් අඩු වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම 31.90 දක්වා කාණ්ඩේ ආගමික සිද්ධාස්ථාන 10692ක් තියෙනවා 7%කින් ඔවුන්ගේ විදුලි බිලත් අඩු වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම හොටෙල් කාණ්ඩය කර්මාන්ත කාණ්ඩය ඇතුළත් කරපු නිසා අවමය 29ක් හෝටල් ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ ඉන්න සංචාරක ක්ෂේත්‍රයේ ඉන්න පාරිභෝගිකයන්ගේ විදුලි බිල අඩු කරන්නත් 29 සිට 40 දක්වා ඒ ප්‍රතිලාභය ලබා දෙන්න තමයි යෝජනා කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
Also in news tonight, the Indian High Commission refutes recent reports that the Indian government demanded compensation from Sri Lanka for the assistance provided during the fire incidents on board the Express Pearl and MT New Diamond vessels off the coast of Sri Lanka. The Indian mission in Colombo recalled that its government immediately deployed ships of the Indian Coast Guard in response to specific requests from the Sri Lankan Navy for assistance to fight the fire. But the reports of demanding money are completely false and incorrect, a statement said.
The Indian High Commission in Colombo issued a statement in reference to media reports that Government of India had demanded compensation from the Sri Lankan government for assistance provided during the maritime disasters on board MT New Diamond in September 2020 and MV Express Pearl in May and June 2021 off the western coast of Sri Lanka. The Indian High Commission stated that such reports are completely false and incorrect, adding that Government of India immediately deployed ships of the Indian Coast Guard in response to specific requests from Sri Lankan Navy to provide assistance to fight the fire incidents on board MT New Diamond and MV Express Pearl. The Indian mission in Sri Lanka said India has raised a claim for deployment, salvage activities and items undertaken by the ships in line with polluter pay principle as per the international norms. Meanwhile, the government of Sri Lanka has been requested to join India's claims with that of the Sri Lankan side in the respective forum. However, the request has been for presenting these claims to the owner for settlement and reimbursing the compensation received through established channels. India reiterated that the country did not demand any compensation from the government of Sri Lanka and that India's immediate deployment of ships were in line with neighbourhood first policy and security and growth for all doctrine.
Sri Lanka no longer in the top 10 world inflation countries. Details after this break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන්කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි. ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්.
World Bank estimates a decline in Sri Lanka's April food inflation to 30% from the 42% recorded in March, after being featured in the top 10 list of the world's highest food inflation in January. In its latest food security update, World Bank says agricultural prices in Sri Lanka have fallen slowly, putting continued pressure on the food importing countries and domestic food prices.
In its latest food security update, the World Bank estimated a 30% food inflation in Sri Lanka during the month of April. This is a 12% decline compared to the 42% food inflation rate recorded in March this year. In its observations on Sri Lanka, the global lender said after the unprecedented high inflation mid-year in 2022, falling global energy and fertilizer prices started to ease off inflationary pressures in early 2023. They said agricultural prices in Sri Lanka have fallen more slowly, putting continued pressure on food importing countries and domestic food prices, which remain 60% higher year on year. The World Bank report, quoting the January Household Food Security Survey conducted by the World Food Programme, noted that 32% of households in Sri Lanka were food insecure, with 73% adopting food-based coping strategies. The highest food inflation was recorded from Lebanon during April this year at a rate of 352%. Argentina was the second highest with 115%, while Zimbabwe followed with a food inflation rate of 102%. Last year, the World Bank said 51.3 million people in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Pakistan and Sri Lanka were facing high levels of acute food insecurity.
Continuing the positive momentum of the last session, the Colombo Bourse rebounded today sharply, recording the largest intraday gain of 120 points in 2.5 months. The main index moved on a steady uptrend throughout today's session, with investor participation predominantly centered on index heavyweights, which were battered down during the previous weeks. Activities were centered on selected banking sector counters, mainly H&B, amidst thin volumes as concerns on domestic debt restructuring hover among market participants. However, analysts say with the positive upturn in market activities, the main index gained sharply by 120 points and closed at 8,755. Meanwhile, market turnover showcased a sizable improvement, recording a week high of 940.5 million rupees. Turnover was dominated by banking sector counters, followed by the energy sector. However, foreign investors remain net sellers for a second consecutive day, recording cumulative net foreign outflows of 277.1 million rupees. And here's a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Well, oil prices rose today after data showed U.S. inventories and fuel suppliers tightening, and following a warning from the Saudi energy minister to speculators, raised the prospect of further OPEC Plus output cuts.
Brent crude futures rose by 1.42% to end at $77.93 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude gained 1.56%, ending at $74.05 a barrel. Saudi Arabia's energy minister said he would inflict more pain on short sellers who are betting that prices will fall. Some investors took that as a signal that OPEC Plus could consider further output cuts at a meeting which is scheduled to convene on the 4th of June. Also boosting oil prices was industry data which showed that US crude oil and fuel inventories fell sharply. Crude inventories fell about 6.8 million barrels last week, according to market sources, citing American Petroleum Institute figures. Gasoline inventories meanwhile dropped about 6.4 million. If data from the Energy Information Administration confirm these figures, US gasoline inventories would have declined for the third consecutive week to their lowest pre-Memorial Day levels since 2014. Meanwhile, price rises were also capped by news that Britain's stubbornly high inflation rate fell by less than expected last month, that raised the chance of more interest rate hikes.
Well, a ban on short domestic flights for journeys that can be completed in 2.5 hours by train was signed into law in France yesterday. Issuing a statement, the Transport Minister of France stated that the move is an essential step and a strong symbol in the policy of reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
The law came into force 2 years after lawmakers had voted to end routes where the same journey could be made by train in under 2.5 hours. The ban all but rules out air travel between Paris and cities including Nantes, Lyon and Bordeaux, while connecting flights are unaffected. Critics have described the latest measure as symbolic bans, highlighting that banning these trips will only have minimal effects on carbon output. The French government had faced calls to introduce even stricter rules. France's Citizens' Convention on Climate earlier proposed to scrap flights where train journeys of under 4 hours existed. But this was reduced to 2.5 hours after objections from some regions, as well as the airlines. Meanwhile, issuing a statement yesterday, the Transport Minister of France stated that the move was an essential step and a strong symbol in the policy of reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
The rocket company owned by billionaire Richard Branson, Virgin Orbit, shut down today, months after a failed space launch. The company sold its assets, including its jet Cosmic Girl and most of its headquarters in California. Virgin Orbit launched a satellite mission earlier in January, which failed to complete the first ever satellite launch from the United Kingdom.
Renowned rocket company Virgin Orbit ceased operations permanently today, just months after its major satellite mission failure. Early in January, Orbit's Launcher 1 failed to complete the first ever satellite launch from the UK. Meanwhile, early in April, the rocket company filed for bankruptcy protection in the US, which was just weeks after the company paused operations in an apparent attempt to shore up its finances. The company's converted jet and leases on properties have been sold for $36 million. Accordingly, Virgin Orbit's headquarters, rocket factory and equipment were bought by aerospace manufacturer Rocket Lab for $16.1 million. Its converted Boeing 747 jet called Cosmic Girl, which carried the satellites in the failed launch, was sold for $17 million to aerospace firm Stratolaunch. Another aerospace company launcher bought Virgin Orbit's launch site and lease in the Mojave Desert for $2.7 million.
Welcome back to the news. We take you to some local news once again. Former President of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka President's Council, Salia Pires, points out that laws delays in the legal system can badly affect Sri Lanka in the ease of doing business. He made these comments speaking at a conference in Colombo. In the meantime, President of the Bar Association Senior Counsel Kaushalya Navaratna highlighted the need for changes in the legal system with the incorporation of new technology.
A conference on law delays in Sri Lanka, organised by the Ambassadors Forum, was held in Colombo last evening.
Laws delays is an issue that has significant implications for the daily lives of future of any nation. Many countries suffer from this problem, which is considered a key indicator of nation's business climate. What they do is the business people, they find out how the system runs, how the legal system runs. We are far below down the line. Sri Lanka is an example of a country where laws delays are rampant and widespread. While lawyers play a crucial role in the legal process, there are allegations that they contribute to the problems of laws delay. So they say the lawyers are responsible. But to my view, it's partially correct, but not really. There are others who are responsible. Not this is a message to the lawyers. If there are no delays, if there's a system, they will do better than what they do now. Then there is trust in them and the lawyers, that the lawyers and the system. However, it is important to note that other factors and individuals such as judiciary, court staff, and evidence experts are also responsible. It is crucial to have well-trained judges with deep understanding of the law. Judges must have not only the knowledge, they must be well-trained, and judicial temperament is a a must. Additionally, the legal procedures in Sri Lanka are unsatisfactory and require improvement, definitely.
Now, the impact of laws delays, it impacts on the lives of people. So, we know that litigants, people who have gone through civil cases, land cases, sometimes to resolve, they file cases so that they can make arrangements in their lives for the future. People go through family cases, they want to finish perhaps marriage, to finish a divorce case, to move on in life. But sometimes these cases take years to finish. I had an instance where, in the meantime, the person concerned had married, had children. Then, years later, there is a conviction and a prison term. Now, it changes the impacts not only on the life of the accused, but on the impact on the accused family and on his children, who are in a sense also victims, because they have to face the consequences of perhaps what their father did many, many years before. Then, of course, we know that it impacts on business. Sri Lanka's ease of doing business, Sri Lanka has been ranked 99 among 190 countries. Of course, ease of doing business is not only due to laws delays, but due to many factors. But laws delays also contributes to the ease of doing business. Biggest consequence is the loss of confidence in the system, and where people look for alternatives to resolve their disputes, not alternative dispute resolution, but for other alternatives. So, for instance, if you want to get your tenant out of the house, you might be tempted to go and look for extra legal means rather than going to court and waiting many years.
The factors relating to the loss delays could be multiple and simply cannot be attributed to the conduct of the lawyers. We can't simply hurry the quick disposal of the cases. At the same time, you cannot delay the proper conclusion of the cases as well, because both might bring some injustice to the parties involved in the process. The efficacy and the efficiency of the legal system must be improved. There is no two words about it. And some laws, we have what are called the archaic laws, which must be revamped. The new laws must be introduced. We must embrace the new systems, the modern technology, no two words about it. But having said that, unless and otherwise, the litigants, they have a proper understanding of their obligations as well. When it comes to the litigation, I don't think, even if you have any efficient system, that will bring the required results.
Minister of Transport Bandula Gunawardena says measures will be taken to secure over 300 unprotected railway crossings across Sri Lanka within a period of 2 months. Speaking in Parliament today, Minister Gunawardena pointed out that the total number of completely unprotected railway crossings in Sri Lanka number 330. He said there are a total of 1,117 railway crossings across the island, and among them 438 level crossings have been protected with colour lights and 434 with bells and lights. However, the minister emphasised that 100 more railway crossings will be secured during the renovation activities of the Northern Railway line. Officers of Sri Lanka Customs at the Central Mail Exchange seized a stock of cannabis with an estimated street value of around 34.75 million rupees following the inspection of 10 unclaimed parcels sent from abroad to Sri Lankan addresses. The stock had been sent from the United States and Australia, which were packed in 10 parcels to addresses in Boralasgamua, Velawatta, Minuangoda, Valisara and Nuwara and Talangama areas. Since the owners had not visited the Central Mail Exchange or forward to collect the parcels, the relevant parcels had been inspected by the customs officers in the presence of the officers of the Police Narcotics Bureau and officers of the Postal Department. And that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9 on AdaDerana. I'm Indivari Amuatta. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.